My name is Dwayne Dixon, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Cultural Anthropology. For 2 years, I did fieldwork with young people in Tokyo, Japan, specifically with a group of professional and amateur skateboarders who live and ride in the suburbs of western Tokyo. I used a video camera as a form of field note taking. It sees more than we can take in or consciously remember. It can provide tone, context, environment, and setting. It records more than we realize, background sound, including conversations of others, and the natural actions of those not overtly the focus of the camera's gaze. The camera is a framing device. It's an analytic tool to think about and experience the world, and as such, its effective use really depends on how we plan to use the camera within a larger methodology. We really have to think critically about what the camera is contributing to our project. What sorts of data do we think the camera is going to give us? In using the camera as a primary method of research, I encountered several complicated issues. First, how to develop relationships with people and not simply be a weird guy behind a camera. It was important for me not to let the camera become my only identity, as if I was an appendage to the machine, as if it was leading me around and limiting how others perceived me. I needed to engage with individuals and develop genuine social relationships that would enliven and deepen my research. The second issue was when to shoot and when not to shoot. This is pretty broad and covers a range of moments and events, things that were potentially embarrassing, uncomfortable, or even illegal. I resisted the urge to pull out the camera when people started to argue, for example. I mean, it makes great video, and it's the staple volume level of confrontational talk shows and reality TV that we've become accustomed to, but that's not what I was after. I wasn't looking for the sensational moment as the primary piece of visual evidence to collect from my research. In fact, I was more interested in the ritualistic, the mundane, the everyday things that people did, because I felt that those sorts of events, those sorts of activities between a skater and his skateboard, or the social interactions between skaters, would show me a lot more about the texture of people's lives. The illegal part gets trickier. Skating in public space is pretty much always a borderline activity. The skaters themselves, my subjects, had already made decisions about legality and risk very consciously, so I felt comfortable following along and filming them. This issue of legality and risk was already a contingent factor in my research. It was an issue I myself had already considered and contemplated before I even set foot out of the door with my camera. In several instances, police did show up, and suddenly there wasn't this clear line between myself as the researcher and the skaters as my subjects. Nor was there a clear line between law-breaking and law-abiding. In one dramatic example, the pro skaters I was on tour with were riding on this wall that was part of a corporate building. A pro photographer was shooting the skaters while I was both filming the skaters and attempting to record the way the photographer was making his images. The skaters had realized there was a security camera on the building, and they tried to avoid its gaze, but eventually these two security guards showed up who were more likely local Japanese mobsters with some affiliation with the company that owned the building. I didn't know whether to keep filming and potentially exacerbate the situation, or to just turn off the camera and get out of there like the other skaters had done. I kept filming, but I kept filming sporadically, turning the camera on and off, remaining just out of range. My indecision is so clearly evident in this erratic footage that I shot. It's not focused, it's interrupted, and the audio is unclear because I never ventured close enough to the action. The footage is useful exactly because of these flaws. It attests to my uneasiness with the position I tried to maintain in the face of the conflict I was pulled into and the conflict I was going through internally, in the moment, as I was trying to make decisions about what I should be doing for my research and shouldn't be doing so as not to jeopardize my subjects further. This moment was clearly a key event, when the interaction of the skaters with the building, with space, provoked power, in this case in the form of these angry Japanese mafia guys. For my research, this moment is as useful to me in understanding how the camera affected me as a researcher as it is for the data it recorded. The camera tells a story about what it sees, but it also tells a story about who is using it. It shows or reveals the sorts of questions that are critical to thinking about how the camera functions as a tool within a research method. There are three primary issues that I confronted in using a camera as a tool in my research. One, I couldn't allow the camera to overwhelm the critical eye I needed to bring to my research. I constantly needed to think through and be reflexive about why I was using the camera. Did I really need to be making these images? Or was I just doing it to add a sensational feature to the research I could just as easily have accumulated by writing things down and generating more traditional field notes? Second, I needed to be very careful in choosing who to shoot and when to shoot. Lastly, I needed to be alert to how the camera might put my subjects and myself at risk in the course of carrying out my research.